John Kerry is on the hot seat in a matter of hours. Secretary of State, the only witness at a congressional hearing that will examine that controversial nuclear deal that's been cut with Iran. There are questions as to whether or not this deal is falling apart. California Congressman Ed Royce is chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and my guest now. Sir, good morning to you and welcome back here to America's Newsroom.
Good morning, Bill.
What is your first question?
Well, I think our first question is going to be the comments made by the foreign minister of Iran on Wednesday, where he said even though the agreement says that the plutonium factory, that is at Iraq, is the site of this, is supposed to be halted, construction is supposed to be halted, they're going to continue construction, and then on top of it, Iranian officials said they're going to build more of these plutonium bomb-making factories. Now, we can argue about enrichment. As you know, we think it's foolish to give them the right to enrich. But in terms of the plutonium program, it would be so irresponsible for us not to point out that this is already in the written interim agreement. What in the world does the foreign minister mean saying that they're going to continue construction on that site?
Now, a pointed question. Did the administration know the Iranians would take that position before the talks were concluded in Geneva?
I don't think they knew that, but here's the point. Regardless of what Rouhani or his foreign minister say, and remember Rouhani on Saturday, in front of a group of students, some of who were yelling, these Basiji militia were yelling, "Death to America," during the program, said that the centrifuges would never stop spinning. So regardless of the provocation on the Iranian side, does this mean the administration is going to ignore this? Is going to continue to unravel sanctions, reboot the economy in Iran, and eventually allow them undetectable breakout capability for their nuclear weapon
We're going to see how
program.
Secretary Kerry answers that. Three specific questions for you right now. Why does the administration want a deal with Tehran?
Well, I think the administration, frankly, never supported sanctions. Clearly, our approach in Congress, we were ratcheting them up. As you know, my bill was over in the Senate, which would have probably imploded the economy in Iran or given the Ayatollah a choice between true compromise on his program or economic collapse. I think they wanted to avoid that hard consequence of confrontation, so they chose to try to negotiate this.
All right, second question.
But not in a way that I think is verifiable. Go ahead.
So can Congress torpedo the deal that apparently is on the table?
We don't want to
yes
torpedo the deal. We want to strengthen the deal in this sense, Bill. We have sanctions legislation in the Senate, bipartisan support, Democrats and Republicans, that frankly will put the pressure in place, a hammer, if you will, in which we say, look, if you violate this interim agreement, this hammer will come down in 6 months, and the types of sanctions you'll be looking at are the types of sanctions that the world put on South Africa.
Is that something the president would have to sign? I mean, because already you're hearing some give from Democrats on the Senate side. They talk kind of like the way you're talking, frankly.
The president can veto that, but remember, before, we have passed sanctions legislation over presidential vetoes. One example I would give you is the sanctions on South Africa. If you recall, that's what, by the way, got Mandela out of prison, got an election and an end to an apartheid regime, and got South Africa to give up its nuclear weapon. That was the fact that Congress, in a bipartisan support from Gingrich and House Republicans to the Democrats, overrode a presidential veto and put sanctions on South Africa. We could do the same thing here on Iran with these types of tough sanctions, the bill that's in the Senate right now. The administration obviously does not want to ratchet up the pressure, and my concern here is that now that the sanctions are being lessened, they're largely psychological as well as legal. So you see the headlines in the paper about all the business interests trying now to do business in Iran. I mean, the only reason they would compromise is tough pressure. So we'd better have something there by way of a hammer, by way of legislation that says that if you do not comply with any interim agreement, this is going to come down hard.
Well, it does appear that these sanctions have worked, and that brought them to the table. Third question, final question. There are those who say you're just talking tough, and there's no way that Congress will intervene with the deal that is going on between Tehran and Washington. What would you say to them?
I would say that in the face of opposition from this administration, we passed my legislation, my and Elliot Engel's legislation, out of the House with a vote of 400 to 20. So if in the Senate we can get an agreement up, if we can get this legislation up onto the floor, then I think we have the ability to follow through with some very, very important additional leverage and pressure on the regime. What remains to be seen is whether the leader there, Harry Reid, allows a vote on the House floor.
Well,
but if it
on
comes
the
up
Senate
for a
floor,
vote,
but he appears a little
Senate floor.
squishy right now. Yes or no? Does he do it?
Well, we don't know yet, and that's why I think the hearing today is going to help. Okay. I think this will help build pressure.
We'll be watching from here. Thank you, Ed Royce. We'll see you at
Bill.
1 o'clock this afternoon for that hearing on Iran with John Kerry.
Thank you.
Martha.